Ahora viene un invitado muy especial de Dell, Carey. Aplauso para él, por favor. Trajo barra, parece.
Muchas gracias. Hola, ¿cómo están ustedes? Qué lástima. Una vez más, con más fuerza. ¿Cómo están ustedes? Bueno, my name is Carey, and I'm the lead educator for Dell's Social Media and Community University. So we take the letters for those words, social media and community. That's SMAC, so we call that SMAC. Anyone at Dell can get smacked. No matter what their position is, their tenure with the company, these are classes that we teach to activate our employees in social media. And this term is known as employee advocacy, and that's the topic that I'm here to discuss with you all here today. So I'm hoping that I'm going to answer some of your basic and maybe advanced questions around what is employee advocacy anyway, and that's where we're going to start our conversation. There's a saying I get in training and development. I teach classes, and there's a saying, show, don't tell. Right? If you just tell people, they're only going to remember so much. But if you show them, they're going to remember a lot more. So if it's all right with you all, can I ask for a little bit of participation to help illustrate this concept? Perfect. Good. I'm going to go ahead and come down then and have a little bit of conversation with you all. I apologize for the people working the camera. I know I'm messing it all up for everyone here. So where did the clicker run off to? Perfect. Thank you so much. So as I was reading a little bit about the country, right, trying to learn more about the country on my way out, the slogan that I heard for tourism here, se queda en ti, right? Everything you see, all the signs, all the information, and I know it's being shared in social media, that same phrase, se queda en ti. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this side of the room is going to act for me as the official social media accounts for the tourism board and their followers. So, first row, second row, third row, fourth row, fifth row. You are people that work for the tourism board. You have official social media accounts for the tourism board. So I'm going to give you a count of 3, and on the count of 3, I want you to repeat that slogan, se queda en ti. All right? So on the count of 3, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Fantastic. Now we're going to do that one more time. Now the rest of you on this side are going to be the people that follow these official social media accounts on Twitter. So I'm going to count them down again. They're going to say the slogan, but because you see their great content, you're going to repeat it, just like you're retweeting or sharing or responding. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3. They're going to shout it, and then a second later, you all are going to repeat it. Ready? All right. 1, 2, 3. Fantastic. This is what most organizations and most companies do. They have official social media accounts, they share content on a regular basis, and they slowly build up a following, right? So that's how we end up in these scenarios. Now, what I'm here to talk to you about is an untapped potential for expanding the reach of your message, for building new relationships, for building more engagement with the people that you want to have conversations with, and that's employee advocacy. So now, I'm going to work with you all on this side. Don't worry, I'm not done with you all yet. We'll come back. So now, you all are other employees. You don't have official social media accounts for Panama, but row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4, row 5, we're going to start it again. But for you all, you don't have the same size following as those accounts do, so we're going to have you be just a little bit more quiet, not quite as loud as them, okay? So on the count of 3, you all, 1, 2, 3. Okay, good. No, this is good. Now, we're going to have the next group join in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? So we're going to have them, and then when you all come in a second later, just a little bit louder than them. Okay? So here we go. 1, 2, 3. All right, good. Come back one more time. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're the third group. So when this group repeats, then you all are the next group to repeat. So here we go one more time. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Good. Everyone from this group back, you all are group number 4. So I'm going to do this one more time. I'm getting out of breath already. I'm going to fly by like one of those Game of Thrones dragons here. I'm going to do this on the side. All right. So you all are the loudest in the back at the very end. One last time. 1, 2, 3. All right. And this is how employee advocacy works. The official accounts usually have more followers. And I'm going to show you some numbers and statistics, right? I'm supposed to show you a bunch of graphs. Don't worry, that stuff's coming. But this is how it happens. The official accounts tend to have more followers than the individual employees. But the individual employees have the thing that the official accounts don't, and that's trust with their audience. So the official accounts might get their immediate followers to do that, but the message doesn't spread much further. Whereas the employees are going to share something that's trusted, and those people are trusted, so those people are trusted, so those people are trusted. It passes even further. So these are the two different groups. Now, ideally, over time, you have an organization that's then able to integrate both of those things. And that's when you really see the power of social media, when you have these two groups coordinated. So, it's going to be the last one, most complicated. I'm going to have the official social media accounts are going to start off. Then, when those followers start, you all are going to start as well. And then we'll go down the row here. Ready? This is the most challenging one. 1, 2, 3. You all made me run all that way, and you all were so quiet. Oh, my God. I know it's after lunch, all the blood's in your stomach and not in your brain. That's okay. Hopefully we woke it up a little bit. That's ultimately the power, though, of employee advocacy. You have the official accounts. You can still craft a very strong central message. We have that slogan that comes across. But you have those employee advocates who are enthusiastic about it, who are truly passionate about it. And that becomes a separate channel for that message to pass on, for new relationships to form, and for deep connections to be made between those employees and a new audience. So we'll continue to talk more about this as we move on. So, okay, other than running around and having fun and watching Sean get out of breath, why should you all care about employee advocacy? Right? Why should you spend time developing a program for your organization or for your company? Well, the first thing is, notice that I divided the room in half when we first started. And we recently actually did some research around who follows our branded accounts at Dell and who follows our employees at Dell. And we found that there was only a 14-15% overlap in followers between those two groups of people. Now, you might think that, hey, the people that follow the company are going to follow the employees, but that's actually not the case. It's not the truth at all. So when you activate employees in social media, you are reaching an entirely new audience than you were by just relying on the official social media accounts that are out there. And that's why they're such a powerful tool when they work hand in hand. The employees might go, I'm a little bit scared. I don't know what I can post. That's fine. See what the official accounts are saying. And if you share what they're saying, you're not going to get in trouble. It's already been approved. You can share it, and then you get access to those additional audiences along the way. So that's the first major benefit of employee advocacy, is that you're reaching an entirely new audience in this space. Perfect. The next benefit is that the engagement that our employees has is higher than the engagement that our official accounts have. Now, this first graph shows you that our corporate accounts at Dell actually have roughly 4 times the amount of total followers as our employees do. So you would expect with 4 times as many followers that you would see 4 times as much engagement. But in actuality, when we look at these numbers, what you'll see here is that there's roughly the same amount of engagement from a quarter of the followers. So the employees, even though many fewer followers, they're actually getting the same amount of engagement, the same number of retweets. So what you see represented here in this graph, the green is the total number of tweets that they shared. The red is those number of tweets that were related to the brand. So you can see the corporate account shared nearly 40,000 tweets. Nearly 32,000 of those were directly related to the brand. They were very transactional in nature. Whereas our employees shared 92,000 tweets, and only a third of them were related to the brand in those pieces. So you see they're getting a lot more engagement, they're getting a lot more interactivity by doing less work, and that's because they have the trust, they have the engagement, they're having real conversations, right? No one wants to have a conversation with the Dell logo. We found that out, right? It's cool, it's a great looking logo, I have no problems with it, but no one wants to have a discussion with it. People want to have discussions with real people. And I've actually found for myself that people don't want to talk to the social media guy. They don't want to talk to the social media woman. They want to talk to the people that understand the products. right? They want to talk to the engineers. They want to talk to people that are getting their hands dirty with this technology and with these products on a daily basis. So when you activate your employees, not only are you able to start more conversations, but those conversations are more relevant. The people who have the topic expertise are able to reach our customers in that space. And so the quality of those conversations becomes much greater. Employees are even more trusted now than the leaders of the companies they work for. Now, there are some variations here across the board. Michael Dell does pretty well for himself in social media, very large following. But when you actually look at trust, and these numbers come from the Edelman Trust Barometer, they release numbers every single year, and they showed a trend this year that showed that people worldwide, this is US, Latin America, all across the world, have less trust in institutions this year, lower trust than they have at any year in recent history. So it's less trust in governments, less trust in companies and institutions, less trust in groups. What they do trust is individuals, because you can look someone in the eye, you can have a conversation with someone, and you can decide for yourself, are they being truthful? Are they being honest? Are they genuinely passionate? Do they really understand what they're talking about, or are they just faking it? Or are they just trying to sell me something? So the difference here is people trust the employees more. That's the next advantage of having your employees out there and active in social media. This one's a sad reality. You can't stop your employees from engaging in social media. I've talked to people at many companies who try to block all social media at their sites. You can't get on Facebook, you can't get on LinkedIn, you can't get on anywhere. Well, guess what? Social media doesn't happen on the desktop and on the laptop overall. I saw this specifically for Panama. 90% of the traffic to Facebook is coming from mobile now, right? So you're not going to stop people by putting that out there. They have access to social media, and they're already talking about your brand. They're already having those conversations, sharing their experiences as employees, and hopefully some of them are sharing good things about your products and services and your companies as well. So why not take advantage of that, nurture it, and grow it? And that's the goal of an employee advocacy program overall. So here's the question. Sean, you did a bunch of yelling and running around. You've given us some numbers. Are there actually companies who are really doing this and really seeing the benefits from it today? And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Dell and how we access and how we engage with that. But I want to share with you some other examples of companies that have what I consider to be very strong employee advocacy programs, so that as you continue to research and learn more, you can continue to find out about these companies as well. And the first one I'll talk about is Adobe. Right? Adobe, very large company. They're creating tons of software on a regular basis. They built an entire employee advocacy program, and one of the big advantages that they saw from their program was in talent acquisition. And what they found was then when their employees shared their experiences of what it was like to work at Adobe, that other people found that much more credible than a recruiter telling them what it was like to work at Adobe. Again, people want to talk to the individuals, and they're going to trust those other employees more. There are other sites and other review sites where people share their experiences for where they work. I know that in North America, Glassdoor is a big social media site where people will share, here was my experience in the interview process. Here was my experience working. Here's what I think about the leadership. Here's what I think about the direction of the company. People are having these honest conversations. And when you educate and empower and activate your employees to share those stories, they're more impactful when you create those and put them in front. So the Adobe Life site was a site specifically designed for employees to go out, and they wanted to drive talent acquisition. And just by having employees share their stories, they film videos, they write blog posts, and they put it out there, they've grown their traffic to that site from under 400 visitors a month to over 10,000 visitors a month. Why is that? Because there are real stories there. People see value in that. People want to engage with that. Second example is the company Deloitte. When they look at content that they're trying to feature, they run it through their official channels. They will sometimes do paid media and ad buys to push that content out there to their customers, and they activate employees. When they look at their numbers, if there's a specific piece of content, say a blog post or a video that they want a lot of people to see, when they look at what we got from our official accounts, they actually see that 50% or more of the traffic to those featured posts are coming from employees who shared that link as opposed to other channels. So they're seeing huge value and huge engagement from this. And then finally, GoDaddy. GoDaddy is a company that's had some PR problems. and some image problems over time. And it's because of the way that women were portrayed in their advertising. They also ran into some issues in regards to their stance on net neutrality. And so because of these issues, a lot of customers were upset. They were losing customers in this space. And so GoDaddy rightfully did a lot of things to bring more women into the workplace, elevating them into leadership positions, bringing them in, elevating women in technology, and changing their stance on net neutrality. So they were doing all the right things from a policy perspective, from a hiring perspective, but when they tried to share that message out, no one cared. No one was listening. No one believed them. So they said, we saw your commercials, we hated that. It wasn't until they activated their employees, women who were now taking advantage of that, women who were in positions of leadership, women who were leaders for the company, who then came out on social media and started talking about how the culture of the company had changed and how they were making the right decisions and how they were moving in the right direction, that customers really started to believe them. And now you start to see that the sentiment and the way people feel about GoDaddy has started to turn around. But that really didn't change until they began to activate their employees. So, okay, Sean, you're telling us all these great stories about Adobe, about Deloitte, about GoDaddy. Isn't that all US stuff? Isn't that North America stuff, right? What about Latin America, right? Well, I work for a global company, right? And so we have to look at social media from a North America perspective, from a Latin America perspective, from a Europe and Middle East and Asia, Asia Pacific, Japan. When we look at what our employees do for us specifically in Panama and Latin America, the results are amazing. And here when we compare what our employee advocates are doing in Latin America, and yeah, I see people smiling over here. They take pride in the fact that they're engaging in this space. Let me tell you a personal story before I even get into something around the company. Some of the advocates that I'm going to share their names with you in just a moment, just because of their tweets and their posts about me, my clout score has raised over 5 points over the last week, just from the engagement of the people that live and breathe and work this right here in Panama, in Latin America. So I want to go ahead and throw out and just show you Arlene Diaz, who you've seen, if she's fantastic, yes, rock star, absolute rock star here in Panama. So we did some research and we looked at all of the employees and all of the mentions over the course of the first quarter. That's where these metrics come from. That's where these numbers come from. So for the first quarter, Arlene made the top 10 most influential employees at Dell. So on the same list with Michael Dell. So you talk about the ability, absolutely, the ability of Latin America to leverage these tools and to leverage these types of programs. It's at the same level as it is for other regions in that space. So from an influence level, we see it. And when we look at the list of the people who share the most content around Dell, 3 people here in Panama made the top list. So Manuel Rios, Dalia Rodriguez, Arlinda Smith, all 3 in the top 10 for the entire company globally. Manuel Rios, by the way, number 1 in the company, sharing the most content, the most passionate. So if you tell me this sounds great, but hey, this is Panama, I'm telling you, it works here in Panama too. Cool. So let's get to the real meat of the matter here. How do you go about building an employee advocacy program, right? We got some nuts and bolts, and we'll definitely have time at the end if you have specific questions or want to drill deeper on a topic, but let me give you some just basic tips to start out. The first thing you're going to want to have in place is an establishment of clear rules, policies, and governance around social media, right? You're going to want people to know where those guidelines are. Where are the legal guidelines? What are the do's and don'ts? And this is for 2 reasons. One, you don't want your employees saying things that are going to get your organization in trouble, right? That's the obvious reason from your perspective. But from their perspective, they don't get involved in social media because they're worried about saying the wrong thing. When I talk to classes, when I talk to new groups of people getting certified on social media, one of the biggest barriers or fears that they have is that I'm going to say the wrong thing. I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to get in legal trouble. I'm going to get the company in trouble. And so they might use Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat for themselves, but they won't use it on behalf of the brand. Having those policies in place actually makes them feel more comfortable. Some people go, if I put a bunch of rules in place, they'll get upset. They don't want to do that. No, they actually want that. So give them those guidelines. That's going to make it safer for your organization, and it's going to make your employee advocates feel more comfortable as part of that process. Once you have those policies and procedures and rules in place, The next thing you need to do is educate, and what else? Yeah, you got it. Education. Repetition is the greatest teacher in the world, right? It's educate. So you have to get out there and educate and empower and activate. And that's what we're doing in this space. So part of that is, hey, here's information around the guidelines, the do's and don'ts, all the legal things and all the guidelines and policy things that we just talked about earlier. Those are kind of one of the core things. But we also need to teach them, how do you build a following? How do you actually start having conversations and building relationships? How do you go from 3 Twitter followers to 2,000 Twitter followers? That's a long road. You have to set appropriate expectations. When I see employee advocacy programs that fail, they usually teach the employees the legal do's and don'ts and the rules of the road, and then they say, hey, here's all of our posts. You guys just go retweet all of those posts. Well, what's the problem with that? The problem with that is that all the people you're telling to retweet only have 7 followers, and those 7 followers are their coworkers. So when your employees are sharing this company message, it's just going around in a giant circle inside your company's walls. So you do need to teach them about the rules of the road and those pieces, but you also have to teach them how to be authentic, how to build real relationships, how to have conversations, how to grow their trust and their credibility in social media such that people outside the company look to them as trusted sources of information. And there's no single playbook for doing that. You have to have conversations with them. You have to invest the time to give them those skills. And there we're not teaching them, hey, do this and this and this and this and then check it off. You're teaching them principles and best practices so that they develop the judgment to do the right thing at the right time. And that's a challenge, and it requires a time investment. But when we look at the advocacy programs that see the types of results I've been showing you, it's the ones that really do invest in education. Now, of course, this is self-serving because I work in social media education, so of course I'm going to promote that up here. Obviously take it with a grain of salt, but that's where we see the difference. So you've got policies and procedures in place. Now you've got some employees who are educated and activated. Then the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make it as easy as possible for them to find and share the right information, and for you all to say, hey, just like we did with the branded accounts, se queda en ti. You need to get se queda en ti in front of your employees. And a tool is a fantastic way to do that. Now, there are plenty of tools that are out there. So this is not a commercial for Everyone Social, but Everyone Social is the tool that my program works with, I'm familiar with, so that's why I talk about it. And it's a tool that what it allows us to do is it allows us to put content in front of our employee advocates. So if there's a big event, Social Media Day Panama, I guarantee you there were articles about Social Media Day Panama that were waiting in the Everyone Social tool. Once someone goes through the training and the education, they get access to the tool. Now when they see that article is there waiting for them in the tool. Hey, I live in Panama. This is about a Panama event, so it's relevant to me. It's something I care about as an employee. And I know most of my followers will live in Panama as well, so I know it's relevant to them. They then share that content, and now the content's getting in front of the people that it needs to get in front of, instead of just getting in front of random people. It doesn't matter how many people see your posts. It matters if the right people see your posts, and that's the other advantage here of employee engagement, is that the people that follow them are going to share the same interests, the same passions, the same areas of knowledge. And that's why you saw earlier in the graphs that they get more engagement, because they share those things in common with their followers. So the tools make it easy for us to get the right things in front of them. It also allows them to set up their own content streams. So one of the things I do is I occasionally share social media content. But one thing I see a lot of companies do is they have their employees share nothing but content about their company. So if you followed me on social media and you were looking at all my tweets and you just saw Dell, 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 you get bored pretty quick. And then what you see a lot of people do is they try and force some humanness in there. No, I'm not a robot. I'm really a human being. So Dell, 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 Dell. Who you rooting for in the soccer match? Dell, 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 Dell. I know it's football. I apologize. Dell, 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 Dell. Where are you going to eat this weekend? Dell, 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 Dell. And no one believes any of that. So one of the things we teach, and one of the things the tool enables, and one of the things the education enables is what we call the 80-20 rule. So what we tell our employees is, at most, 20% of what you post in social media should be about your company. The room got real quiet when I said that, didn't they? Because it sounds wrong. Well, if I post about the company more, won't more people see it? Yes, they will. But what's the impact of that? And if they see nothing but company content, then they're going to say, oh, well, Sean's only posting because he's trying to sell me something. Sean's only posting because the company told him to. And now you don't trust me anymore. You don't see credibility. You don't see value in following me. And as a result, you don't click on the Dell content I'm sharing. And in fact, you probably unfollow me, right? If we have you sharing more content about it. Now, I'm not saying you share company content 20% of the time and then cat videos the other 80% of the time. That's not what I'm trying to advocate for here. If I'm, say, an expert in cloud computing, I can talk about Dell's cloud computing strategy 20% of the time, and then 80% of the time I can talk about new trends in cloud computing, case studies from other businesses that are executing in cloud computing, future state articles about what the future may look like as new applications in cloud computing come forward. Those are things where people read and they go, oh, Sean has his eyes open. Sean understands the industry. Sean understands the technology. And Sean's trying to share this valuable information with me. And what we see on the back end is that people who adhere to that 80-20 rule, they get more total click-throughs than people who post about Dell 4 times as much. So people who are posting about Dell 80% of the time get less total click-throughs than people who post about Dell 20% of the time. This is the power of trust and credibility in social media. When you're giving them what they want first, then they're more likely to click it. You're paying it forward, they're seeing the value in following you, and as a result, the individual benefits because they become more valuable, and the company benefits because more people see their content. So, we have policies and procedures, we have education, we have tools. The next thing you'll need to have a successful employee advocacy program in place is measurement. So I say measure and monitor your employees to track the progress and the results. Now I want to be clear here. I don't mean you should be reading your employees' tweets. That's creepy. We don't want you hiding in the bushes, stalking your employees. For one, it's not scalable. You don't have enough people and enough time to look over everything your employees are saying. That's never going to happen. But secondly, right, all of these fine people posting on behalf, they go, well, I don't know, Sean's going to see this post. I don't know if I can now, and now they get nervous, and they don't want to post in that space anymore. So not only is it not feasible, it also discourages your employees from posting in the first place. When I say monitoring and measuring, I'm saying looking on a broad scale. Looking at things like we looked at earlier in regards to the number of followers, the amount of engagement, how many shares are taking place. So I've got a really easy question for our Dell people in the room. What's the hashtag we use when we're sharing content specifically about our company? It's hashtag I work for Dell. And it's a disclosure piece, and that's part of legal guidelines that we ask for them, right? So that people know when we're posting about the company that we work for the company, and we're not pretending to be a random customer who just loves Dell. But the other part about that is that when employees use hashtag I work for Dell, now we can do searches for that hashtag, we can do analytics and run metrics around that hashtag, and that lets us know which content is most popular with our employees. Where are we seeing those gains in influence? Are our education programs providing the activation we need to get more people sharing in social media? Tons of insights that we get from that measurement and that monitoring. So you can see here, we actually have a breakdown and looked at, out of all the content our employees are sharing, how many of them were retweets, how many of them had a link in them, how many of them had a mention of another Twitter user. So we can not only see the types of content, but the ways in which they're sharing in social media. And that's very essential because I know there's plenty of leaders of businesses in this room. You know you're going to ask the question, and if you're not a leader of business in this room, if you try and start an employee advocacy program, the question that's going to ask is, where's the return on investment, right? And having those metrics, having these numbers to show, hey, we're reaching a new audience with these employees, and we're seeing these new engagements and these new relationships come out of it. Hey, we're seeing our links being shared more often, and we're driving more traffic to our official websites and our other properties. All of these things are points of value that you can use. So that measurement, that monitoring is a very, very essential piece. Next, you have to keep the momentum going. Once it starts, you have to reward and recognize over time. So, hey, I love the fact that I get to get on stage and I get to talk to you all, but I also got to give Arlene and Manuel and Dahlia and Erlinda all their shout outs for being such amazing employee advocates in that space. And you can tell we have the conversations. Having that recognition encourages them to continue and to grow and to keep growing their influence and to keep sharing information around the brand. Absolutely essential. Reward when you have the option to do so. Another thing that we do is that when we educate someone, when they go through our certification process, when they take a class, we actually send an email to their manager. They say, hey, your employee invested time to come and take our class, and here are some things that they learned. Now their manager's saying, hey, you went above and beyond to go and get educated, to grow your presence, to make your career stronger, to add more value to the business. And in many cases, we have students that then say, hey, I got a promotion later on because my manager saw that I was trying to grow and to learn more. We also sometimes have students that maybe fell asleep in the class. Then their manager gets the email and says, oh, hey, you just went to the class, right? Good, I'm gonna have you teach the entire team. And now I get that crazy phone call. Hey, Sean, can you tell me about those things? I have to teach the rest of my class. I have to teach the rest of my team. And then we go through it again. That's fine. As long as they listen to it at some point, I'm okay with that. But that feedback loop with the managers, that recognition, that reward there, that's a huge part of what keeps that momentum moving forward and makes it not only a program, but a part of the culture of the business overall. Finally, and most important, employee advocates are engaging because it's meaningful to them as individuals, right? Hopefully we love the organizations we work for and the companies we work for, but one of the things that gets them on board is that they're having a good time when they do that. I know that the minute I set foot here and started engaging with my peers here, we're doing selfies all day long. We're meeting each other, we're hugging. We're meeting these people in person for the first time. This is fantastic. So why do they do it? It's because they're having fun doing it. So you want to have that atmosphere of fun. We do lots of fun things like this. People who are certified and educated in social media will invite them out to go watch a movie together. Anyone seen the movie Chef? If you haven't seen it, it's a fantastic movie. And it's about a food truck that travels across America and a family. And it's also the story about how the father who owns the food truck is a little bit out of touch, doesn't understand Twitter, and actually gets in an argument with a chef, and his whole life is kind of ruined from the very beginning because he makes the wrong statement on Twitter. His son understands Twitter and loves Twitter, right? So we have fun going to see this movie about this father and son who are learning about social media and learning about food and going on this journey together. So we have fun as a group. That keeps them involved and engaged, but we also learn something a little bit extra about social media at the same time. So it's events like that. We send out Valentines to them on Valentine's Day, thanking them for participating in the process. So these are the things that you need for a successful employee advocacy program. You need policies and procedures. I know, I pantomime, I put them in space here. Policies and procedures. You need education. You need tools. You need measurement. You need rewards and recognition, and you need to have fun. And on that note, what I'd like to do is to have some fun with you all, and Arlene's going to bring up for me. Would it be all right if I got a selfie with the rest of the group today? Yeah. All right. Perfect. Where's my timer? Perfect. There we go. Here we go. 2, 1. We're going to do one more. 3, 2, 1. Hey, there we go. Fantastic. So we do have a little bit of time now. And what I'll say is, you all, I'm so honored for the fact that you came to hear us talk about employee advocacy and those pieces there. So hey, se quedan tías for Panama, and I just have to tell you all, ustedes se quedan conmigo. You're going to come with me? Yeah, you will stay with me. And if you follow me on Twitter, @ScarySocial, you will literally stay with me in my phone. Perfect. Good. So now we're going to move into some Q&A, and if you have specific questions about our education, about employee advocacy, we'd love to hear those from you at this time. I love talking to folks.
Hola, sí. ¿Alguna pregunta? Levanten la mano. Aquí mismo.
Hello, Sham. And now I was looking for you in Instagram. Tell me why you don't use Instagram. You have the account open, but I see that since 2014 you don't do.
This is a fantastic question, right?
So,
I love it. Don't ask me the easy questions. Ask me the hard questions. Hey, I mean, it's the same thing. When I first started in Twitter, when I first started teaching classes in social media classes, my background is in education. It's in training and development. I taught classes for 10 years, and then the first couple years when I first started talking about social media, I got a lot of questions like that about LinkedIn and about Twitter. Well, Sean, you have 12 followers. Why should I listen to you about social media, right? These things happen. One of the things, though, that I have to educate people about is that social media should not be a second job. Right? If employee advocates think that it's going to take too much of their time to grow a following in social media, to execute in social media, then they feel intimidated and they never start. So what I say is be strategic about where you begin and go where your customers are. So for myself, a lot of people say, oh, Sean, you teach social media classes, so it's your job to play on Facebook all day, right? No. I have to teach classes. I have to create classes. I have to go and evangelize social media in the business. I have to consult with leaders around the business. So I have just as much time to execute in social media as other people do. So it's a very fair question, but when I look at the amount of time I have to invest, I wish I could be on Snapchat and Instagram and YouTube and live stream. And I'm getting tired just thinking about it, right? But early on, the most return I'm getting from my investment has been in LinkedIn, and that's helped me to grow my reputation and my trust and credibility, and Twitter. That being said, if I was in another role, let's say I was in a product manager role, right? If we're featuring products and services, then a visual output makes more sense for that, and I would be investing there over time. The other thing is that I'm really bad at taking pictures. And you have to steer employees towards where they're comfortable and where their strengths are. So some of my strengths are getting in front of a group and having a conversation. So I can tell you that my next project, the next thing that I'm going to start investing my time in won't be Instagram, it will be live streaming. So live video. Okay, Sean, you're comfortable having a live conversation with folks? Let's do that in social media because that takes advantage of your strengths. Prior to that, writing was one of my strengths. So writing out my posts, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, writing articles and blog posts, that's where it was. So long answer to a short question, but hopefully that gets me out of trouble and gives you a little bit of insight as to why Instagram is not part of my personal strategy. Great question.
¿Otra pregunta? Levanten la mano. ¿Nadie? Aquí hay una pregunta.
Is there any other company you know that is applying this?
So there are many companies I've met that have some aspects of, many companies have now started to adopt at the very least education around social media. So there are other companies that have certification programs. Even some of our competitors have certification programs in place. But what we don't see is the tools, the rewards and the recognition, the coordination between the official channels and the employee engagement channels. Many times they work in two different areas of the business, and so there's not a lot of cooperation and discussion between those groups. But the three that I shared here earlier are ones where you can find more in-depth information. So I think Adobe is doing it really well. I think that Deloitte is doing it very well. And GoDaddy was actually a news story. That was a story I found while I was researching the presentation. So there are good podcasts and articles that you can read about each of those three that talk about their journey because it's going to be a little bit different from the one we had at Dell. Great question.
Otra. Pueden preguntar en español y acá le traducimos a él. ¿Una más? Por allá, voy corriendo.
Voy a aprovechar y la hago en español para el grupo. ¿Crees que en el futuro en Dell se hagan KPIs o KPIs para medir o premiar a los colaboradores por su engagement en las redes sociales de Dell? Do you think that in Dell you will be measuring and awarding your employees because of their engagement with their communities, but rewarding them like bonuses and all that in the future?
That's a fantastic question first and foremost, and it's one that we've been advocating for. We're still trying to build the business case for it, but here's one of the things that we're doing to try and build the business case for it. When we're saying, hey, give us money so that we can give it to people who are executing in social media, they have to say, well, what value are they bringing to us? So the hardest part about that is demonstrating what that value is. And one of the KPIs we're starting to gather more information on and to get in front of our leaders is what we call earned media value. So if you have employees who are sharing 20% Dell content, how many click-throughs are they getting to that Dell content? So those click-throughs, we can say, here's what it would cost us in a paid advertising campaign to get the same number of click-throughs. So we can actually put a dollar value to the amount of traffic that they're driving to our branded properties, and that's one of those ways in which we're starting to build that case and trying to get more along. So we definitely give out of our own training budget to try and reward and recognize, but we're definitely trying to push that even further, and definitely within our sales teams, we're trying to incentivize that quite a bit because we know more and more buyers are millennials, more and more buyers are digital natives, and fewer people are picking up the telephone and answering emails. So we really want to incentivize our sales force to get more active in social media too. Great question.
Do you see Game of Thrones?
What was the question? I'm sorry?
Do you see Game of Thrones? Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones? Yes.
Jenny
Oh,
Newman.
you want me to sing it? Is that what you said? Oh, I watch Game of Thrones. Oh my goodness. Tyrion is my favorite. Tyrion is my absolute favorite. It's coming up soon, right? So I want to know, are Khaleesi and Jon Snow gonna get together? I want to know if the Hound is gonna fight the Mountain, right? I want to see if Khaleesi is gonna attack Cersei in King's Landing. I'm a giant nerd. Okay, good. I've got the credibility now. You know. Oh yeah. Love Game of Thrones.
A ver, otra pregunta, aquí mismo.
When my coworkers asked me if I was ready for the presentation today, I sent them a GIF of Tyrion doing a little dance.
Hey, Sean, here. You talked a lot about education and that you need to repeat. What do you believe will be the message that you try to convey? What's the most important part of engaging people or your organization in social media? What's the message that you would try to transmit to people through education?
So for those that didn't hear, the question is, I mentioned earlier that repetition is one of, the most powerful tools out there in education. So what are the messages that we repeat most often? Well, one of them, I had them repeat early on, is how do you disclose the fact that you work for a company when you're talking about it? So hashtag I work for Dell, that's something that we repeat a lot. That's the message we share a lot. The 80-20 rule, and driving people towards authentic conversation that adds value to their audience first and then company messaging later, that's a huge component of it. And the third thing we really try and message and drive towards overall are our 5 social media principles. So there are 5 core things that we ask everyone to remember. So the first of them is to protect information. So we want to guard our customers' data and privacy and our intellectual property. The second thing that we have them do as far as principles are concerned is to be transparent and disclose, and that's where hashtag I work for Dell comes from. Our third one is to follow the law, so different laws from different social media platforms. The laws vary from country to country and region to region around social media, so we make them aware of that. The fourth one is to be responsible. So this is a contentious time where people may have very strong disagreements about politics, about religion, about tough scenarios, and those discussions can have impacts on the individual and on the brand. So we teach them how to understand those scenarios and how to be responsible and engage in a good way about those topics. And the last thing we teach them is the slide I showed you earlier. Be nice, have fun, and connect. So those are the 5 pillars that we share with every single class, and we reinforce it every single time, and we even give them a little card for their badge to remind them. So those are the core principles. Thank you so much. Oh. And then there's one question back there when you're done.
No, I wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, please.
Really quick. What do you think are like the main obstacles or challenges that a small company or a startup can have while trying to do employee advocacy?
Yeah, so a small or a medium-sized business, when you're trying to grow advocacy, the time that people have to execute in social media is everything. And I think either helping them with tools or helping them with just tips, sitting side by side with them and making things as efficient and quick as possible is very, very important. So one thing I've shown my classes and one thing I show our advocates is that I grew my Twitter following. Again, this is practice what you preach, right? I grew my Twitter following from under 50 followers to over 1,000 followers in about 12 months. And I did it doing only 3 planned tweets per week. And I use the Everyone Social tool to make that happen. So when I share with them that story, people go, oh, I can do 3 tweets per week. That's not going to take my whole day, and I can execute on that. And we show them how to use the tool where I can actually plan those tweets, and they can be scheduled, and those can go out on their own time. Then they see, okay, I can really fit this into my schedule, and they're more likely to adapt and engage and to activate in that space. So it's tools and processes, I think, that are the big way that you can drive them through. And even for a smaller medium business, you might not have a budget to drive something like Everyone Social or the other engagement tools that are out there. There are plenty of free ones. Hootsuite, TweetDeck, right? There's plenty of ones that are out there that you can get for free. That's a good place to start, and you can still see a lot of value with them.
How much do you think we should have a specific budget for little companies to start with social media, or do you have a specific percentage or an amount or something like that?
So a lot of what we do.
I'm starting something, so I don't know how much to invest for social media.
So social media overall, that's a much larger question and a much larger conversation, but let's talk about employee advocacy there. And what I would say is that we didn't all of a sudden say, hey, we've invented this idea called employee advocacy and now we need $200,000, right? No one would have listened to us. No one would have ever let us start the program. So the first thing we did was to identify people in the company who were already using social media for themselves. So people who are growing up their own profiles, who are getting more followers, who had influence of their own, and we asked them to join in and say, hey, we can give you recognition in front of the leaders, and we can do these things to make you more visible and more marketable within the company. And so we got those kind of people who were already rock stars, and we got them on board. And once they were on board, then we could go to other groups and say, hey, look what they're doing, and look at the value it's bringing to the business, and then you can start to make that business case for, let's do a pilot program. Let's bring 20 people on or 50 people on. And so you can't scale or start that program overnight. Start with your rock stars, and then you can build your business case from there. The biggest expenses in an employee advocacy program are going to be the headcount, right? The people to do the education, to do the coordination, and then the tools will be the other large expense. So you'll have to slowly ramp your way into those things. We started with headcount, and we tracked everything manually, and then when we started to really be able to show the value, that's when we finally got enough budget for the Everyone Social tool, and that's kind of how our journey went. Fantastic question. So time-wise, I think we're almost at the very end. You all, at Scary Social on Twitter, if you have follow-up questions, I would love to continue to engage with you. Thank you all so much for giving me time out of your days to participate in this discussion. Muchas gracias, Panama.
Thank you, Sean. Bueno, gracias. Seguimos.